Hey guys, Steve Reichert here from Living Vertical Outdoors, and this is photography and adventure for the working class. It has been a while since I have done anything on YouTube at all, and of course, the last, I don't know, couple of years, honestly. If you've kept up with my channel at all, I have been fairly tumultuous. I've had a lot going on. Anyways, this is my first time live streaming with the GH5, and so this is a little bit new from a technical standpoint, but um, I'm really just excited to be able to get back on here and talk to you all about photography, catch you up with a little bit, some of the things that I've been doing with my life and my time, and since I have some time, in nursing school right now, I'm in between semesters, so I have a little bit of time to kind of invest in the channel and kind of come back to doing what I enjoy. And so I'm hoping that maybe I'll get a chance to connect with some of my community, those of you who are still around. Since the last time I was on here, I actually surpassed 10,000 subs. So welcome to all of the folks that are watching this and are new, I guess, to the channel. And hopefully some of the folks who were around back when I was live streaming more regularly might still be here, and I hope that this offers us an opportunity to reconnect. My excuse me, my setup is a little bit small. I'm in my room here, and so I have computer in front of me, camera, lights, and I got a few other things. So I'm trying to work within the operations that I have, and of course I got my phone here to which I'm trying to, okay, so I can kind of see what's going on here, and they want me to do a YouTube survey in order to, I don't prefer to say, I gotta skip ads on my own channel, basically, just to kind of see what's going on. So anyways, this is sort of a test, sort of just kind of getting my feet back in the waters here. I still have a lot of stuff that I could stand to edit on hard drives from like a couple of years, some mini documentaries that I was working on, and you know, haven't really been doing a lot of shooting. So let me, I guess, kind of back up, because there was actually something that I wanted to come on and talk about tonight. I wanted to talk a little bit about cameras because I've obviously fallen off the wagon. Haven't really been buying all the latest and greatest stuff. Haven't even been keeping up with all that stuff in photography, but I've still kind of been shooting my XT1, so that's, I think, about 10 years old now, and I've been shooting a lot of these little Fuji Instax Mini, and of course I have the GH5 that I'm shooting video on now, but I haven't done much with any of that stuff, and I wanted to talk a little bit about, I don't know, kind of seeing how the cameras that I was really into and that cost, top dollar back when I was last really actively involved in photography, how those have all come down so significantly in price. Like the Fuji X-T2 is like, 750 if you can find it brand new on eBay, and like the XE3 is like, 600 something, and which is incredibly awesome. And I can't imagine what could be out there that could be that much better in terms of quality, where people would be still spending 1,500 and 2,000 bucks on cameras, unless you're doing video stuff. So we got a little activity happening in the chat. King Yuzi, Zeki Rami, hello guys. I know right now my setup is a little bit odd, so I'm kind of using my phone. I don't want, feel like the kind of the angles are a little bit weird if I'm going in the chat. But yeah, it's good to see you guys as well. And King Yuzi was the one who first kind of got on me a little bit about the lousy quality of live streaming from my phone, and so now I believe if ever I have everything set up right, this should be able to go through at 1080, full 1080, which is kind of big potatoes in the world of live streaming. But yeah, I've been kind of out of the game, and the last, pretty much since 2017, I've been really putting the majority of my time and effort not into photography, but of course into nursing, and so that was a big transition for me. And some of my biggest videos on the channel that you can go back and watch if you're not familiar with the story is just kind of how I came to that point of saying, okay, the hell with trying to do photography professionally and YouTube professionally and kind of living as a digital content creator, and just making peace with the fact that this is something that I want to do, but that I don't want to rely on for a living, and kind of has led me to the point now where, I have one more semester and then I will be able to get licensed as a registered nurse and start, kind of focusing on that for my income. And it's so liberating. I mean, I'm still kind of um, it's a little weird coming back because I feel like there's so much backstory that I can either tell people or not, and just kind of leave everybody wondering, like, what's my opinion on the latest Fuji camera without being able to really explain fully that, you know, I have no idea what, like, the XH1 and XT3 and X Pro 3 and all the rest of these new cameras. Because to me, where I am right now, which is kind of, as I led off in the intro of the video, I had a hell of a time, when I was doing YouTube, like, kind of consistently trying to figure out, what's my catchphrase, what's this channel about, and I was having all this existential crisis, which, I guess if somebody asked me now, I still have these questions from a branding standpoint, but I just don't care because it's just kind of my channel where I talk about things I'm interested in, and one of the things I like talking about obviously is photography. So, hey, thanks. King Yuzi says image is crispy. That's awesome to hear. The audio, I did like 7 or 8 test live streams, actually closer to 10. I'm not thrilled with the audio, but if it's audible, which I haven't gotten any complaints yet, so the audio is something that I am going to try to improve, and some of this stuff is, this is like kind of pretty basic at this point, the setup that I'm working at. But thanks, Doug. I appreciate that. It's good to see that people will actually check in when I'm having a live stream. And my goal is to do most of my content on YouTube at this point through live streams, because the time and effort, not that I don't want to put effort in, but just like the time that I realistically have available. So to give you a little bit of context, I just finished my next to last semester, so I have one more semester till I'm an RN, and then of course things are going to get interesting because I'm going to be working, and there's going to be some big changes, probably moving and different things like that are going to be involved there. But I have about a month until school starts up again, but I have a job that I'm working as aquatics director, so I kind of manage a pool, swim lessons, and kind of try to make some of those programs run at a fitness center near me. And of course, my daughter is in Massachusetts, so I'm kind of traveling back and forth to see her. So those things take some time and make it harder for me to, shoot a lot. And like I said, I have stuff in in the hard drives from back in the day. And it's like the further I get from those hard drives and those projects, the harder it is to go back to them and edit them because I've lost so much of that story. But at some point, I'm going to do that too. But at this point, probably not going to be doing a lot of edited content, although it was really important to me to come back to the channel to reconnect with you guys and to be able to, you know, make sure that everybody is still here and understands that I'm really grateful to have broken 11,000 subs. Um, Kind of without really trying. I wasn't making an effort to do that. It just kind of happened because some of my Fuji videos, just kept getting hits, especially around this time of the year when people are looking at buying cameras for Christmas and stuff like that. A lot of that stuff has kind of come full circle for me. But this is something that I definitely want to um, do more of as I'm moving forward. So, that's kind of my real goal for tonight, is just to say, see who's still paying attention, who's still here. I would love to get ideas, comments, questions, stuff for me to kind of work through in future live streams so that, I kind of have some more jumping off points, because I do have some stuff to talk about in terms of photography. But I also kind of want to hear where everybody in the community is at here, and if there are things specifically that you like to hear more about or that you're interested in. I'm happy to touch on that stuff rather than just blathering on about what is new in my life. I got to be perfectly candid. The thing that really got me interested in live streaming again, there's a guy who's like a big YouTuber, which I had never heard of, and some of you may or may not know of him, but his name is Copper Cab, and he is a very interesting character. Turns out he was the guy who kind of got South Park started making fun of gingers. And I'm not taking a position on gingers. That's not the point of this little diatribe. But watching his live streams really I found them to be very entertaining, and it made me kind of realize that there is a lot of value in just being able to, really connect with people and just chat and talk about stuff that's on your mind rather than necessarily having a very tight focused, subscriber goal driven model in edited content. And I'm not saying that that's not something that has no place, but it's like you have to be able to shift gears to accommodate what you can do most consistently, I think, and whatever you can do with the most joy in your heart, because I think that comes through to people. And if you feel burdened or tired and you're not able to, kind of get it up emotionally, then you're not going to be able to make good content no matter what you're trying to do. So, um, let's see. Uh, Abel, I can't pronounce the last part of that. Amazing that you're back. Hope to see new content soon. Hope I'm not bursting your bubble, but yeah, probably this is the kind of content that I'm going to be doing. I would like to be able to actually do some photo critiques and, just have more candid discussions with you guys and address some of the topics that you guys are working through that you're interested in, because right now, honestly, I haven't had a lot of time to shoot. I haven't been doing a lot of photography. Like I said earlier, I've been shooting a lot of the Instax. So every time I go and see my daughter, like, I've had my cat is kind of promiscuous, and so she has left left me with a bunch of kittens. So that's been interesting and also time consuming. But kind of gave one of those kittens to my daughter, and so like when I went out to see her, if you look on my Instagram, if anybody of you follow me, I'm at Living Vertical on Instagram, and I don't post there a whole bunch, but when I do have a chance to take the camera out and shoot a little, bit, I will do that. And so that was the last thing that I shot was a couple weeks ago with my daughter and my mother-in-law in Massachusetts. Just kind of them with a kitten, and so that partly reinforces to me, um, the value of doing, you know, one of the questions that I used to get a lot back in the day was kind of like, what do I shoot if there's nothing interesting going on? And I think that, you know, if there's nothing interesting going on in your life, then that really means that you are not looking at your life the right way, because my limiting factor right now is definitely time. I haven't climbed. I haven't done any kind of like exciting adventure travels like I was doing back in the day. My life has been like school and work, pretty much, and a little bit, of time with my daughter. And I'm dating a wonderful young lady who's a doctor, and she lives in Michigan. So there's kind of this element of travel that's incorporated into what I'm doing. But the times that I have when I am able to travel, or like when I'm seeing my daughter, or going out to visit my girlfriend or whatever, I'm not interested in messing with the camera, because I just want to enjoy the little bit of time that I have, kind of, to enjoy these people in my life, and I don't want to try to make a thing out of it. So it's hard to find the emotional energy to do photography, but the subjects are never lacking. The subjects are all around. It's just a matter of finding that perspective. King Uzi asked if I ever thought about Twitch as a streaming platform. I have no knowledge of Twitch whatsoever. I mean, I hear people talk about it on YouTube, but it's definitely off of my radar in terms of ways to stream. I think it's hard for me to think about Twitch as a streaming platform aside from YouTube, because YouTube is where I've kind of put the most in, and I feel like I have the most success. And I wouldn't kind of know where to start if I were to go to a new streaming platform, because, you know, if I'm going to a new platform, I kind of have to be able to say in, short order, this is what I'm doing, this is what it's about. Whereas on YouTube, I've kind of gone around the horn with all the different things that I've done between travel and climbing and diabetes and photography and that and nursing and kind of quitting photography, going into nursing, and that whole amalgam, if we could be that generous as to call it an amalgam rather than just a dumpster fire of my life, kind of has a little bit of context built into the platform already. So that's one of the reasons why I'm here, and frankly, like I am not in a position where I feel inclined to establish or break ground on a new platform for me. I've gotten rid of Facebook almost entirely. I mean, it still exists, but when I post to Instagram, it doesn't push to Facebook. I loathe and detest Facebook for a number of different reasons. And one of the reasons, actually, that is less political, let's say, that I detest Facebook is just the fact that I feel like they try to do too much. And one of the things that I like about Instagram, which is really the only platform that I still use aside from YouTube, and I think that's a big part of the reason too for me, is like I consume a lot on Instagram, and so that's a place that I can kind of identify with and say, all right, I know what I'm looking for on Instagram, so if I'm going to post something, I can at least use that as a yardstick to say whether or not the stuff that I'm doing is worthwhile here. And the same thing goes with YouTube. Like I've been using YouTube as a consumer a lot, not just with school stuff. I've been spending a lot more time lifting and getting into fitness because climbing and just kind of that as an avenue for activity and fitness is not really open to me right now. I'm living in upstate New York and I don't have the budget to travel, and I just climbing is just it's weird. Climbing was like pretty much what I lived my life for up till like 3 years ago, and now it's kind of like it's very unfamiliar to me in a lot of ways. It's very strange when I even think or talk about climbing or see pictures of my climbing and videos. I'm like, oh yeah, that used to be my life. I used to do those things with those people, and now it's like so much of my life has changed. Um, it's been very odd, and I don't think I've fully unpacked the fact that like my life up till 2 3 years 2.5 years ago is so truncated, so separated from my life that it's almost like I can't connect the two halves of my life, like where it is and where it's going, compared with what brought me to that point. It's like everything with the divorce and my ex's illness and career change kind of all happening like right in one short window, where it's like just kind of like you wake up from a dream and you find everything has changed completely. And so, on some level, I guess maybe it's moderately interesting, or I can imagine it being interesting, the fact that I've kind of had to reinvent myself on some level actively and say, all right, what do I want to be about? What am I making my life into now? I mean, I have, you know, relationships that exist, and of course, it still exists, and I have responsibility, to my daughter that I feel more keenly than ever. Um, but I kind of, you know, the whole thing about the shtick about adventure and photography and travel, it's not really about that anymore for me. It's much more of a working class type of thing where how can I use photography for me to enjoy my life and to take better pictures that I'm going to be happy with, not pictures that are going to get more likes on Instagram or pictures that are going to be more appealing to sponsors or something like that. And it's really disconnected me from a lot of the big accounts on YouTube that are, it's funny. I saw Tony Northrup. Not that I've ever been. I mean, like I've watched some of his stuff, the Northrup's photography channel. I saw him in a Men's Warehouse ad while I was like lifting, and I was like, good for Tony. He's looking good. I do follow what's the angry dude, the bald angry guy with all the tattoos, because he kind of got me into Fuji stuff, and Ken, angry photographer. Um, but it's interesting how like everybody's got these different perspectives, and I feel like a lot of people at least the last time, and that's kind of the caveat that I have to keep coming back to. The last time I watched YouTube as a photographer with that in mind, everything was about, a lot of the channels were all trying to establish credibility as like professionals and great photographers and stuff. And like, I kind of reached a point where it's like, you know, either I have that credibility based on the stuff that I've done or I don't, but now I don't care because I found what photography is for me and what I want to do with it and how it kind of fits into my life. You know, it's a tool for me to capture time and moments that, again, with a divorce, with, you know, significant illness with my ex and her diagnosis, and like with my daughter growing up so fast, she's like 5.5 now, and like, I'll sit around and watch videos that I made of my daughter on my phone, and just like, I'm so thankful that I took those pictures. I'm so thankful that I made those, those little silly meaningless things, because that's what it is for me. That's kind of the main thing that I want to do with it. But I also want to, share that stuff with you guys, and also kind of hear what you guys are doing and try to collaborate and talk about that stuff, because I think, there's a certain point where it's just nice to be able to talk to other people who understand kind of what you're dealing with and where your head is at, and aren't necessarily looking for somebody to give them like a bunch of bullet point information about how they can use composition to, 5 ways to make a better picture with composition. And like, there's a ton of that out there, and it's great, and there's some really awesome accounts that do that. It's just, that's kind of not what I'm feeling right now. That's not where I'm at. And there probably will come a time, once I'm graduated and once I'm licensed, which will probably be like in the fall, where I can start putting more time into making, that edited content again. Because I can tell you, like, picking up the GH5, and not to start a whole GH5 versus Fuji thing, but like picking up the GH5, like, I really want to shoot video again. Like, I'm very interested in shooting video and telling stories again. But I just really, really, like, one of the things I've improved a lot in, I think, is time management, which, for those of you who know me currently, you will say, wow, you must have been really awful at time management before, because you're still not great. And that's 100% accurate. I used to be much worse than I am, but I'm now at least fair to middling. And I'm going to catch up some of these comments in the stream here in just a second. But I've definitely improved my time management, and one of the things I've improved is by looking at things that I do not have the time to do effectively, and just say, nope, I don't have the time. I'm not even going to bother. Just keep my oar out of the water and focus on the things that I have to do. And that's what's gotten me through nursing school up till this point. I think I made the dean's list a couple of semesters. I don't really check, because honestly, I don't care about my grades beyond passing. I try to do as well as I possibly can with everything, but I'm not like hung up on grades. I've gotten a college degree before. It's really, none of that means a whole bunch other than being excellent and well versed in the subject material and being able to help people when it counts. That I do care a lot about, and having command of the information to where it's useful. But that's not always reflected in grades. Not trying to be like a snob. I'm just saying, like, that's kind of how I approach things. Um, Abel says, that sucks, but that's good that you still are trying things that you like. I quit the gym, some friends and family. So nice that you're reconnecting. King Yuzi says, taking a holistic approach to YouTube is good, not overthinking it. Yeah, and that is something that I definitely struggle with, is I overthink the hell out of everything. Abel says, by the way, cute drawings of your daughter. Yeah, she's contributed a lot of the artwork that is in here. This kind of whole thing. Like, I had her here over the summer with me, and so we got to spend a lot of time together. And that's a big factor too, is that, like, I have so little time with her, relatively speaking. I see her a couple weekends a month. I don't want to be taking away from that time by, like, I want to use photography and video as tools to enhance that time. And there's like a very fine point where you only have so much time, and if you go too far with what you're doing, and what constitutes too far changes from person to person and situationally, from year to year. you go too far and then you're just taking away from the little bit of time that you have. And so, yeah, it's been interesting just seeing that balance change and seeing my perspective shift in relationship to that balance. It's been a lot of fun. Hey, Paul. Paul says, good to see you back. Appreciate that. Um, I'm surprised and honored that so many folks would stop in to check out what we're doing here, um, and or what I'm doing. It's not we anymore. There's no proverbial we. I don't have to pretend that I have like a team of lawyers on retainer and accountants. It's just me in my bedroom trying to pretend that I have a studio. And if I move more than 6 inches in any direction, I will knock over either lights or microphones. And there is the slight possibility that the batteries will die. I'm live streaming with the GH5 on batteries, actually on a off-brand Wasabi battery, so not even the Panasonic battery. And I was doing some tests before. Still got 2 bars left, so again, just a little throwback to all my videos saying why I like Panasonic so much better than Fuji when it comes to video, even with all the stuff, the myriad of things that I love about Fuji. The battery life is like I would never even dream of trying to do a live stream on batteries with a Fuji camera. That just would never happen under any circumstances, and it's totally casual doing that with the Panasonic. So King Uzi says, what are your plans after you graduate? Great question. So generally speaking, what I'm trying to do right now um, is figure out that exact thing. I know that I want to work, at least I'm pretty sure from what I know, there's many different ways that you can go with nursing, from like school nurse to surgical nurse to maternity. Actually, this past semester was peds, so kids, and maternity, which is like labor and delivery, and neonates, like little babies. And surprisingly, I really enjoyed maternity. I mean, at first it was a little uncomfortable because you kind of get in there and like there's not a lot of women who are going to give birth, which understandably, there's barriers that you can't overcome as a male in the nursing profession that are very clear when you're talking about maternity, because, and it's not like universal. There are some that are like, yeah, I don't care, like feel whatever you need to feel, grab what you got to grab. Like, I don't care. They have no compunction about any of it. But there's some that it's like, you can tell that they're a little uncomfortable. Their partner, their husband is a little uncomfortable. It's a little weird. Um, but that notwithstanding, what I really enjoyed was working in the NICU, which is the neonate ICU or the newborn ICU. And I really enjoyed the fact that there's a lot more focus in there, and you can really go deep on the patients that you have. And so I kind of feel myself being pulled in the direction of ICU, at least to start with, and then ultimately going to flight nursing and trying to do like some sort of uh, medical transport, or some sort of emergency medicine. And in studying out flight nursing, a couple of the things that I found, and this is just a very broad overview, but that typically being in a rural area that's far away from hospitals is a good place to find that type of job, because they can't just transport over land, where they would, if you're closer to a bigger hospital, they'll drive rather than fly because it's much cheaper and easier. But if you're somewhere like where I was living, like near Zion National Park, previously I was living out there in Utah, and that's where that picture came from. Um, you know, it makes a lot more sense if somebody has a severe issue to put them in a bird and fly them to the, Salt Lake, or I think Vegas would probably be the areas where they have like the bigger trauma centers, and they can deal with stuff like that out there. And I know we used to see search and rescue and transport choppers all the time, whenever there was some kind of emergency when we used to be living in Zion. So the rural nature of that type of nursing appeals to me. But ICU is kind of like the intermediate step, because usually my understanding of how they pair teams on helicopters, they'll have like one paramedic or ER nurse, and then the other will be ICU. So it's like one kind of does the preliminary stuff, kind of stabilizing, and then the ICU kind of nursing component is, you know, further stabilizing and doing a little bit more advanced or in-depth care to prepare them for, you know, arrival at the trauma center. So basically, ICU is a skill that is going to be really useful if I go into flight nursing, which ironically, flight nursing is kind of requires you to be like under 200 pounds to fly in a lot of teams. And I'm like, been trying to gain and get bigger. And so now I'm like, you know, like right now I'm probably around like 211, 212. So I'm going to have to cut down a little bit if I'm going to be flying. But ICU is a good skill to get me to flight nursing, but it's also a skill that I think matches well with what I like doing and what I want to do. Just because I've worked a little bit in some clinical settings, I've done a little bit in the emergency room, and I like the fact. So there are some things that I like about it, but it's also really chaotic and crazy because like you got people coming in and you have to kind of figure everything out really quickly. Whereas my impression of ICU, which I'll probably be doing more of that. I did NICU with the newborns a little bit, and that really kind of got me thinking in that direction. And actually, some of my instructors recommended, they said that I would be really good, you know, after kind of watching me doing like peds, they said that I would be really good and I should work with kids, which is something that I've thought about doing. You know, so that ICU where you have somebody who's a little more critically injured, they've been admitted already, we kind of know what's going on with them, we know the basic diagnoses, and we're trying to kind of improve their condition or like kind of stable, keep them stable and keep them from regressing or improve their condition. And you kind of have a little bit more of like a one-on-one or a 2-to-1, 3-to-1 maybe in some cases, depending on kind of what all is going on. But you have a lot more. It's a little bit deeper rather than kind of having a bunch of stuff being thrown at you. It's like a more intensive type of thing, which is intensive care unit, right? So that's something that I feel really connected well or made a lot of sense to me. And so all that to say that probably I'm going to, you know, it's going to take me most of the summer to get licensed, I would guess. And then I'm probably at this point, my plan, and again, plans change, but my plan is to move closer to be with my daughter in Massachusetts. That might be like New Hampshire, that might be Rhode Island, that might be some parts of New York. My thing is like, I really want to be able to go out west and I want to live out west or at least somewhere moderately rural because my ideas about adventure have changed somewhat with kind of watching things unfold the way that they have politically and socially over the last couple of years. It seems like since 2016, a lot of stuff has really come to the surface, and you know, we could certainly have interesting discussions about politics that would probably derail everything on the channel. But basically, I have looked at climbing, and it's like I see a lot of people putting a lot of money and effort into something that now, when I look at climbing, it seems very frivolous to me. A couple of years ago, it seemed like a really good vehicle to learn important things about life, and I think that some of that's still true. But I think I kind of graduated from climbing, and now when I look at that, it's like, you know, it's just playtime. So what I really would like to do is I want to move somewhere that's rural enough that I can have a couple of chickens and a, you know, small farm, and be able to kind of farm on the side and hunt. Be as you know, on some level, I don't think the idea of being completely off grid is realistic because you know we're social creatures, and also my daughter has her own life that is, you know, a lot of my daughter's life is not governed by my preferences or my crazy ideas about what would be a good way to live, but I want to be able to kind of move more in the direction of self-sustainability without being a complete hermit and completely disconnecting, so that I have a balance between small farm, working minimum necessary hours at a hospital, and making enough money to kind of support and go from there. And right now, the next couple of years of just getting myself licensed and getting established and getting some good work experience, that's really the name of the game at this point. Um, but part of that, whatever I do, I'm really hoping to. One of the things that's been a struggle for me, like I was talking about earlier, is just time management. And I don't want to get to the point where it's like, oh, I work 3 12s and then I have free time with my daughter, and in between, I'm just going to be playing video games. I want to really be using my time wisely, and I hope that this channel can be an outlet for me to maintain some accountability and also to track the progress of whatever it is that I'm doing wherever I go and however that, winds up looking. Abel says, Abel Castillo, I can pronounce that more easily. I don't know if you changed your name on my account, but if you did, I thank you for that. Um, Hope everything is going well. So I'm taking the pediatrician. So I don't like a pediatrician, and this could be semantics. Pediatricians generally are kids doctors. I don't see myself going the route of actually being a doctor. To me, nursing is a really good balance of income, flexibility, and by flexibility I mean not only being able to choose a bunch of different areas that you can work, but also choosing where you want to work, because there's a lot of different hospitals and there's a lot of places that need nurses. So, whereas being a doctor, and actually, my girlfriend is a doctor, and seeing what she goes through in relationship to that, it's not for everybody. And by that, I mean, it's definitely not for me. So I'm happy with the idea of being a nurse, and I think that that's what I'm going to be focusing on. But pediatrics, in terms of like nursing care with kids, that's something that I could see myself doing. Like I've worked with the elderly, and of course, elderly is a growing population. Um, but and as somebody who's getting older and I mean, I'm old. I'm not getting older. I'm old. Like I'm at a point where, I'm out of touch with a lot. Like I teach at the college where I'm going to school for nursing. And so I have like younger kids in my classes, the classes that I teach. I teach like first aid and CPR stuff. And it's like, I kind of was getting further and further and further from those kids. I started teaching there when I was 24, and it was like, oh yeah, it's like, we're kind of on the same page. And then it's like, oh, I'm a little older, I'm a little older. Now I'm like, okay, yeah, these are like children and I'm old. It's like it really hit home to me. Um, but like dealing with older folks is hard. Um, it's not for everybody, so you got to kind of find that thing that calls to you. And so far, I like peds and I like ICU, so doing some sort of, ICU that is focused on pediatric patients, I think that would be something, at least that's you know, a target that I'm aiming for right now. I can change my mind, pretty quickly, so that might not, be the case in another month or two, but we'll see. Um, yeah, well, I do struggle. I do struggle with the names. Once I get it, I actually generally am pretty good with names for the most part, and I will always try to pronounce it at least once. Take the risk of humiliating myself, but yeah, I do struggle with that a little bit. Um, Paul says a lot of people are dumping Nikon for Sony, so bodies and glass is well priced and plentiful. Very true. What do you think about getting into D700 for photo, or maybe some of the older A7 from Sony for is better bet? Um, oh boy, here we go. You've you found my weakness talking about gear, camera gear. So full disclosure, if you hadn't heard me kind of at the first part of my rant there to open the little live stream, I haven't kind of dipped my toe in the pool of anything photography gear related for however long. So it's like I came back from the future, and I'm in I'm still stuck in 2016. So the X-T2 is a brand new camera that I can't afford. And now I'm looking on Amazon and they don't even sell it anymore new, and I can buy a new one, a brand spanking new one on eBay for $750. And to me, the XT2, like just for stills, the XT2 with like a wider lens and a portrait lens and a bunch of adapted manual focus glass for shooting portrait stuff that will get you into the more telephoto lengths for $750. Like I just I scratch my head and I'm like, what is it that people want that they're not getting, with Fuji? And I'm sorry, Paul, I'm not answering your question very directly. But to me, that's like the big thing. It's like same thing with like the little Sonys. For my money, the best bet is a Fuji X-T2, which is, with a couple of lenses. Not a ton of lenses, just a couple of lenses, because you get too much and then you don't use them, and then what's the point? Um, or the Sony, the best Sony in my opinion, dollars for donuts, is the RX100 Mark IV. I know, totally not in the realm of the same style of camera, but the features on the RX100 Mark IV for the price and the size, like I'm at a point where I'm kind of debating buying an XT2, like because I have the XT1 and I have the Fuji Instax to shoot, my little single serving little Polaroid shots, and then I have the GH5 for video. Um, a D700. The Nikons are really good cameras. I like Nikons, and I've had so many people ask me, and I was going to do a little rant, and I may yet, um, specific to this, or people are like, "Oh, you're a photographer. Can you tell me like what camera I should get?" Sure. And then they send me a link. This is the camera I'm looking for. One friend sent me a GoPro, and I'm just like, oh, GoPro. And I'm like, no, please don't. Please don't get a GoPro. Like, unless you're going to be, paragliding or windsurfing or skydiving or bungee jumping or some, crazy thing like that, and you're mostly doing video, and like the act that you're doing is so nonsensical or extreme that in and of itself gives what you're doing value, like from a creative standpoint, then just please don't get a GoPro. But the same thing goes with Canon and Nikon and stuff like that. Not My objection with GoPro is both form factor and quality, because I just never can get GoPro images to look that good. I just whatever sensor and the glass and all that stuff. It's good for what it does, but whatever. Canon and Nikon and all those things, they're beautiful. They're absolutely outstanding. My only complaint about those is the portability and your ability to kind of be a gunslinger when you have a bigger camera. So the bigger the camera that you have, it puts you at a deficit. And that's one of the reasons why I really, really, really like the Sony RX100 line. I don't know what they could have possibly added, unless maybe they fixed the overheating or added batteries that don't drain in like 30 seconds. That would be really cool if they could fix that. But otherwise, in terms of features like 4K video, all kinds, an ND filter, like that you can stop your thing down, you can get motion blur in the middle of the day, you can shoot waterfalls and get the silky mist, like a built-in ND filter. Mind blowing. The only other company that I know of that has that, or at least that had that when I was looking at cameras, um, was Fuji with the, I guess the X100 series, when they put the ND filter. That's like awesome. I love the ND filter. So yeah, I mean, to me, I'm always going to be erring on the side of portability. Um, Paul says the body is around $300. $300. Yeah, I mean, you can always work around the size limitations. For me, the big thing with size is more just that people focus on the camera. And when people see a Fuji, like, oh, that's cute, but it's really quiet and it's small, and people don't really take it too seriously. And that's one of the biggest things, at least for photographing people, that makes it nice is you can very easily be inobtrusive and just kind of blend in with, what's going on. Um, but the price coming down, I've actually looked at one point. I was looking at some of the, like the 850, the D800 or D850. I think it's somewhere. I can't keep the lineup, the nomenclature of the Nikons straight in my head, but I remember the 850 or the 800 were like kind of big potatoes back when I was shooting the D600 or 650, one of those back in the day, and like or even like the price of like a D3 or something like that. That was like the top of the line camera back in the day, and now it's like kind of in that same ballpark where like 300-400 bucks you can get this camera. I was very tempted, but embracing a larger form factor would require me to grossly change the style of my shooting, and it just wouldn't work for me. But you're not asking for me. In terms of like it being a good deal or a good investment, I mean, I think just as a general, regardless what style you shoot, if you take any brand of camera and you buy what's like 3 to 5 years old, you're gonna get, you know, any of the weaknesses of the cameras that are 3 to 5 years old are almost entirely ones that can, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but like the shortcomings of any cameras made within the last 3 to 5 years are ones that are almost entirely made up for by a little bit of skill, preparation, or extra work. They're convenience things. They're not like quality things, right? If you're doing everything in your to the best of your ability and working hard and like composing carefully and timing stuff right, you know there's not really, it's like, the difference between a camera that shoots 16 frames per second versus 24 frames per second, is it that really that big of a deal? I mean, I know Sony will put out another camera and like charge, re-up their kind of marketing to say this is the best fastest camera, and everybody's like, wow, 24 frames per second, are you kidding me? That's amazing. Does it really matter, or is it really going to help the way that you shoot? So I love the idea, absolutely love the idea, and I would love to hear from any of you guys out there that are doing this, who've kind of just gotten off the merry-go-round and are like, okay, like camera technology has evolved as far as it's going to go. I don't really need to buy anything newer, bigger, better, whatever. And I'll probably make a video just specifically, probably a live stream, just because it's easier than editing, but just shoot a quick live stream, talk about this in particular, and just make it short so that people can get through the whole thing and watch it and respond, because we're like an hour deep right now. Nobody's going to get to this, most likely, who's watching. Um, but I think that is really, really a really smart idea. Hey Ryan, hello from Los Angeles. Glad you're back on the tube. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate you sticking with me. I've seen you. We've been in touch on Instagram. Instagram is definitely my most where I'm most active and can connect. So if any of you guys don't follow me, you can follow me and hook up with me on Instagram at Living Vertical. Um, Paul says X Pro 2 isn't better for the street than XT2. XT2. You know, to my mind, and there are some of you who might be able to answer this question better than I can, but I've shot the X Pro 1 and the XT2. I'm sorry, X Pro 1 and XT1. And other than the fact that the viewfinder is in the middle on the XT and it's on the side for the so you can kind of keep one eye open if you want and shoot through the other eye on the X Pro. And there's a handful of little features that some of you who are like, into the X Pro series could probably speak to. But to me, it's like, which form factor really appeals to you more? Which do you like, and which feels most comfortable and feels more sexy and inspires you to go out there and like shoot photos? Because to me, that's what like half of any camera does. When you buy a new camera, it's not the features that are really improving your game. It's the fact that you have a new camera and you feel obligated to take it with you everywhere and torture people with it and use it. And that's the thing that gets you taking better photos. It's not really the nuts and bolts of the camera, again, in most cases. At least that's what I found. So, Skipper says, I've been an RN for 22 years. I love camera gear. Cheers from Canada. Thank you. I appreciate that. Good to hear from you, Skipper. It's always encouraging to find people who are, and this has kind of happened in the long way around where I've had a lot of people comment on the one video that I made back in the day about how I was like quitting professional photography to be an RN and kind of started on that journey. And then I checked out of YouTube and but I still read all the comments and I reply to all the comments that I get on my videos. But I found a lot of people through that particular video who have said pretty much what you're saying, Skipper. And I appreciate hearing that. It's always good to, have reinforcement on those decisions. I've had one person who was like, yeah, I got into photography to escape nursing because I hated it. And I get that. It's not for everybody, but by and large, most people have been, on it. Um, Take care, King Yuzi. Good night to you if you haven't already left. Good to see you on. I was hoping you were one of the regulars back in the day. I was hoping to get you on. Jeffrey Lash, I know that dude. Somebody who I've climbed with, talked to diabetes and all the rest of the stuff, who fully knows the sagas of this channel. Hey, Jeffrey. Good to see you on here. Yeah, the technical stuff does not make a good image. I mean, being excited about a new camera, I think, can definitely improve what you're doing. But to me, the most exciting thing is that there are cameras that I was interested in 3-4 years ago that I couldn't afford because they were kind of new, that now they're like discarded in the rubbish heaps by everybody buying whatever's new at this point. I don't even know the names except like XT3 and X Pro 3, which again, I can't imagine like what could they possibly do to a camera that wouldn't make it too advanced to where it feels like a smartphone, but would improve what it does in terms of taking pictures. Like in my mind, there's a limited amount of like improvements that can be made, even if you are really into gear. And I love cameras. I love the gear part of things. I'm really big into tactile objects, but you know at some point there's only so much you can do. Um, Paul says, I get you, I'm not shooting weddings. I love Nikon DF for its dynamic range, but it's still pricey. Not familiar with that particular camera, so I can't speak to that. Skipper says, let me know if you need any advice. Traveled all over the U.S. for 12 years as an RN doing travel nursing. Super cool. Yeah, I'm interested in doing travel, or at least having that as an option, because my impression is that even if I specialized in ICU, I could still take that and do ICU nursing, but through a travel dispensation, so that I could do ICU and travel and do a bunch of different stuff. And really what I want to do is I really want to be well-rounded. I know there are some types of nursing, or I should really say, without trying to cast dispersions and be an elitist, jerk, say that there are some type of nurses who just kind of want to know whatever they have to know in their field, and then they just are like, that's all I'm going to do, period. Like, I want to really be able to be the most effective and help in the most intense, difficult technical situations when it's hitting the fan, and really have the deepest breadth of knowledge and the best ability in terms of decision making. And my battery is actually flashing on my camera, so we might lose that. And if and when that happens, probably is an indication, um, to get this live stream concluded. So rather than wait for the battery to crash and everything to turn off on me, I think I am going to end this live stream here. It's been a little bit in the neighborhood of an hour. I want to thank you guys for coming back, checking out the live stream. If you're not already following me on Instagram, at Living Vertical, connect with me there. Drop some comments. Let me know what you're interested And battery change complete. Let's see if this thing's still going. Um, hey, yeah, anyways, sorry, I was in the middle of saying my tearful goodbye, and then, well, I changed the battery, and now I've got like another 3 hours of recording time here. Um, hey, Wes, good to see you. Haven't seen you for a minute, man. It's been, this is oh, yes, I know you. I recognize your picture from Instagram. Okay, there's a couple of different Wes's who used to be around the channel back in the day. There was one who's a type 1 that I climbed with up in New Hampshire, but that's a different one. Yeah, let me make sure that this is still going out. It is. Sweet. Anyways, yeah, I still should probably kind of make my way off of the live stream because my tendency was to say, okay, I'm going to do like an hour, and then like I would go for 3 hours, and then everybody would complain. But I think it's a lot more fun to actually be in a live stream and be able to kind of interact and stuff like that. That's pretty entertaining from my experience. Um, Skipper says every type of area of nursing brings its challenges, but overall, I would say ICU is better within hospitals. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And, I would like to work within a hospital and then eventually kind of move outside of the hospital and into flight nursing. Maybe. But flight nursing seems a little bit selective, and some of that seems like it might be luck of the draw. So I don't know that I would be able to really effectively get into, guarantee or count on. I don't want to count on getting into that in terms of my plans, but it's something that I'm definitely interested in, and I, would like to get into at some point, as things go ahead. Um, but for now, kind of in survival mode and trying to stay on top of things. In the absence of climbing, kind of my life has gone more in the direction of. Let me see. Oh man, we only lost 2 people there. That's awesome. We're still staying kind of on top of things, even though the battery crapped out. I just want to say, like, I practiced that battery change coming off the tripod and doing all that stuff. It was a whole thing. So you're welcome. But I've my life has definitely gone more towards the conventional since everything has been going on with school, and so really everything has turned for me towards, at least in my focus, incorporating the thoughts of my daughter and also wanting to have a family beyond the my one daughter. I want to eventually have more kids, and so definitely the fitness and just generic weightlifting, which it is what it is. It's nothing spectacular, but trying to kind of maintain myself and being in the hospital and seeing people who have definitely not done that. Not that you have to go to the hospital to find that. Certainly there's enough people in my life who have not taken care of themselves that I can look at them and get a lot of inspiration of some sort there. But I want to be able to take care of myself and be around, not round. Um, and so kind of lifting, and then on the other hand, like in terms of the way that I can connect with the outdoors and be involved in that stuff is, you know, um, fly tying, and I have, I mean, not really what I wanted to talk about necessarily tonight, but you see the feathers, I'm not kidding. I got actual chicken feathers. This is actually a starling, so I'm I have a whole setup there, but trying to shoot and talk about fly tying is kind of, I don't know that that's necessarily the scope of my channel, so I might just kind of trip all over myself if I were to do too much of that. But like water stuff, like getting a canoe and trying to get out and do some of that with my daughter and being able to fish with her. And we've spent a lot of time over the winter and the fall, just kind of while the weather isn't so great. We can't go outside a whole bunch and can't do much out there. Just tying flies and working on imitating little bugs with bits of fur and feathers, and that's been really good in helping me develop some dexterity, which I used to have because I started tying flies when I was like really young, and now you know it's funny, like I used to be pretty good at that stuff just without trying, and then I went away from it for like 20 years when I got into climbing, and then now I'm back with fly tying, and it's like, oh wow, this is a lot harder than it used to be when I was like 13 or 14. But that's all good. Um, anyways, yeah, so that's a little bit of a catch up of what kind of my life is right now, what I'm up to, what I'm doing. Um, I think I probably, if you guys have any more questions, anything else you want to talk about, you can drop those in the chat. Otherwise, I think I might sign off here for the evening. And I really appreciate you guys taking the time to, tune in. It's always a mixed bag with me on this channel, but even more so since it's like, I don't have a regular streaming schedule. I can't guarantee you what's going to, come up in conversation, where conversations are going to go here. But, my focus kind of rebranding my focus eventually is going to, the branding part is going to happen, but it's, photography for the working class and kind of, that independent vibe. And when I say independent, I don't mean like artistic independent. I mean like actual, like real life independent. Because for me, everything that I do outdoors and everything that I try to instill in my daughter and that I try to practice and work towards personally, it all boils down to independence as an ideal that I really connect with and that I appreciate a lot. And that's something that I think is missing from a lot of conversations about a lot of things, whether it's photography, cameras, health, medicine, everything. Everybody wants to be dependent and kind of shirk responsibility off onto, with some appeal to authority. And then it's no wonder that, we have more authoritarian ways of looking at the world and acting within the world sort of coming to preeminence now, and the individual is getting stepped on because the individual can only really rise to preeminence when independence is valued and self-sufficiency is valued. So that's kind of a little bit of my philosophical bent that is going to continue to come through, hopefully, in this channel. And my appreciation for craftsmanship and tangibility, whether that be through printed photography, which right now again the Instax pictures and talking about that is, hey, you got to take what you can get. That's my printed stuff that I've done recently, but um, you know keeping some tangibility, right? So um, cool, Abel. That's good to hear from you. I'm glad that that you tuned into this, and I'm glad you're gonna connect with me on Instagram there. And I love YouTube. YouTube has been a really um, great platform for me. And I would guess, based on what you're saying, Abel, that you probably found me through YouTube. And I also shoot with the XT1 and mostly manual focus lenses. I do have the 18 for my wide stuff because the adapted lenses, it's really hard to get a wide adapted lens because you kind of cut down the, that you change the focal length once you're putting adapters on and messing with that stuff. But I do have the 18, which one of the videos that I was doing, I don't know whether I shot it and didn't edit it like a year ago, um, or whether maybe I did put it out there. But I think like the 18 millimeter is probably one of the most um, underrated of all of Fuji's native lenses. I think the 18 millimeter is probably one of the most underrated lenses. I love the 18 millimeter. It's really, really good, my opinion. I know a lot of people hate on it, or I've heard people hate on it in the past, but I think it's real good. Um, Also, the 35. So I have the 35 f2 and the 18, so that if I want to do little portrait stuff, I got 35 for that. If I want to do a little wider stuff, I got the 18. And then I have a couple of manual focus lenses, mostly the adapted. I have some M42 like you're shooting with, Abel. And I also got the little, I forget what it's called, the little Russian lens, the little tiny one. And then there's a wider one. I think it's like a 12 millimeter. It's made for the Fuji mount, but it's just manual focus only. And I think it's Samyang, which I've seen a lot of really cool night photography photos done with those. And supposedly they have less coma or whatever, and less, kind of lens artifacts or funniness. Like my terminology is all skewed towards medical stuff. All my camera terminology is like I have to get that off the shelf and unpack that. So I apologize. I'm a little rusty with some of that stuff. But yeah, the supposedly it's a little bit better than the 16 millimeter was, and for all I know, Fuji might have released a new or better 16 millimeter, which I had the 16 millimeter Fuji at one point, and I liked it, but the problem was it was too big and it threw off the balance of the camera if you weren't shooting it with a battery grip, which again, putting a battery grip on a tiny little inobtrusive camera makes it obtrusive and changes the dynamic of what I want the camera for. So I will be honest, there is a little gear lust growing in my heart. I'm trying not to feed that, but you know, I could probably afford to buy an XT2 or a Sony RX100 Mark IV. I could make an argument for buying either of those, and I could probably, get away with that without crushing my budget too much if I work a little bit extra. And so I'm thinking about those, both old, new cameras, both that I've previously owned and sold. But I also bought those. Actually, the Sony I bought for pretty cheap when I bought that because I bought that used. But either of those are purchases that I'm considering, vaguely considering making, because I'm having tons of fun with the XT1. Unintentional rhyme scheme there. Um, but yeah, the XT1 is just a superb camera, and as much as I want to find some fault with that so that I can justify the purchase of like an XT2 or some other newer, bigger, better, sexier camera. Which, I mean, let me be really clear. I loved the sensor in the XT2. That's the same one in the X100T. That I mean, obviously, maybe it's not obvious, but I don't think you can see the detail in this shot. But like that sensor that they have on the X100T is, and the X1, XT2 and X Pro 2, all those cameras, XE3 had that same sensor. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful detail, and the 24 megapixel sensor is something that is near and dear to my heart. It's big enough that you can zoom in, you get a lot of detail. I mean, I've seen um, angry photographer guy Ken. I've seen him posting a lot, really focusing about on the GFX system, like their medium format is the word that I was looking at. The medium format, which is really where I think their main strength lies if you're looking for something that's going to level up or be a game changer in terms of photography. The medium format is like, whoa, that's mind blowing. Like, that's something where it's like, okay, you buy one of those cameras, you've gone from here to here within a certain type of shooting environment where that camera makes sense and wouldn't just be in the way. But that the GFX, the medium format, is definitely a level up. Um, but anything beyond the XT2 sensor, I can't really. And I'll probably start looking at this stuff and hearing more about it from you guys as I start streaming more, have a better idea of kind of what some of their improvements are. And maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong about that. But I really, 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 really liked the sensor on the XT2, and I thought that was a perfect balance, big enough. The XT1, that 16 megapixel sensor, makes some beautiful photos. Um, I just liked having. I always felt like, and some of this could be circumstantial, but I always felt like I got a little more detail and a little bit more crispness in the parts of the image where I wanted it with the XT2 than with the XT1. With the XT1, I can still get that sometimes, but it's a little harder to kind of get that where I want it as consistently. Whereas with the XT2, I felt like there was just, you could dig as deep into the image as you wanted, and it was hard to shoot an image that wasn't just like packed full of detail, to a certain point, is what I felt. So I don't know whether that means anything, or maybe I'm just lazy, or maybe that I was just shooting more low light stuff, because I shot some really awesome images that I'm really happy with. Maybe I'll pull some of those up and do like a split screen thing where I can kind of go on to, show the desktop and show you some of those photos and talk about those in real time. Would be cool, because I shot some really nice stuff that I like with the XT1, and it's very, very impressive what it can do, especially for the money. It's just beautiful. Sorry, I missed a couple of cameras. I missed a couple of comments here. Um, Abel says, my minimum focal lens is 50 millimeters, so I have to check the lenses you mentioned. I want a 28. The Minolta lenses, they're 42 or 45 millimeter f2 is hands down the sharpest lens that I've ever shot anything with in my time. I am just blown away by the Minolta. I got it for like $50 or something like that off eBay. The 28 mil lens is pretty good too. Not quite as sharp, but I mean, we're splitting hairs at this point. It's a very capable lens, and again, super cheap and available on eBay. Um, but that 28 millimeter lens, you're going to have to back up. I mean, it's not always bad because on some level, like your shooting style is going to be influenced by the confines of the lenses that you have. And you can learn to make landscape photography work with a 50 millimeter lens or 50 millimeter equivalent focal length. Like if you have the 35 mil, it's a 50 mil equivalent. So it kind of gives you a little bit of telephoto there. And you can do that. I've definitely shot some landscape stuff where I was like, I wanted that 24 millimeter focal length. Anything more than the 24, then everything kind of, to me, feels like it gets lost. I really like the 24. The 18 works really well too. I like that as well because that gives you the like the when I say the 24, and I have to get back in the habit of articulating this, the cropped sensor. So if you have a 24 millimeter lens, you don't actually have a 24 mil. Like you want a 24 equivalent, which is going to be the 16, right? The 16 millimeter lens, when you put it on a cropped sensor, gives you a 24 millimeter field of view, or the equivalent. And so the 18 gives you like a 27, which is basically like what the iPhone has. Maybe with the new iPhones, they might have, some different ones. Maybe they have like a wider, angle lens available, but the normal iPhone camera is like a 27 millimeter equivalent, which is nice. 27, 28 in that ballpark gives you good focal range to play with. And if I really want something wide, I do have that 12 millimeter, which gets me down underneath 24 millimeters, a little bit in the fisheye-ish lens. Yeah. But Abel says, it sounds like a little bit of a cliche, but to go for a full frame camera, at least for me, the crop factor is a big deal. Fair enough. Um, I can definitely see that being the case depending on how you shoot. And I'm the last person to tell somebody that they have to shoot a certain way. But I think a lot of it is your style and your preferences are going to dictate one thing or the other. For beginners, I usually am fine with saying you don't need this, that, or the other. You don't need a zoom lens that can give you every different angle and perspective and focal length between a huge range of distance. You need to learn what you need, right? Because there's a certain point when you've been shooting for a while, you can confidently say, okay, here's what I need. I know what I want to shoot. I know the lighting I'm going to have. I know the distance I'm going to have. I know the images that I want to create. It's pretty much from here to here. This is kind of what I want to shoot. And when you know that, that gives you the ability to make much better decisions, about your camera gear, so you're buying what you need. If I had a nickel for every camera I bought, I'd be eating nickel soup right now because I would have a lot of nickels because I've bought a lot of cameras. And a lot of that was just like, oh, I want to buy a really good camera. This is another video that I'm going to make too, ranting about like, my friend who's like, oh, I want to buy a camera. Do you think I should buy the GoPro, this GoPro or that GoPro? And I'm like, oh God, please just don't buy a GoPro. Like they're, I hate them. Okay, they may not be objectively terrible. They have their uses, but God, I hate GoPros. And their marketing is amazing. They have such good marketing. Their marketing is better than like essential oils, right? Their marketing is so good that I detest their cameras, and I have bought ones and sold them and then bought another one and then sold it and been like, what the hell was I thinking? And then bought another one and sold it. And then I still have a GoPro. I hate them, but I have one. Their marketing is outstanding, but I hate them. They're terrible, in my opinion. Um, so, yeah. But that's based on what I know about shooting, having done a lot of shooting, and now I can say that fairly, with a decent level of objectivity to be able to say that based on my needs. Because I don't think any camera is objectively bad, but it's bad for whatever it is. Like, and for me, a full frame camera, they make beautiful pictures, but I just don't need what they offer for what I would have to trade off in what they cost in terms of portability, accessibility, being kind of behind the scenes. Because, like, most of my photography right now is shooting my daughter. And once you have a camera out and you have to be like, could you just hold still and smile? Could you do that again? Come on, I just want to get one nice picture. For shit's sake, one nice picture. Is that too much to ask? Like once you get to that point, you've kind of lost the battle already. And so a lot of it relies on you just kind of having that camera always there, and then you're just like, oh, la da da da, click, boom, got it. And then it's like, and I do that to my daughter sometimes where I'm just like, haha, you couldn't ruin this picture, and then I'll show her the picture and she laughs and she thinks it's funny because it's kind of like this little game that we play. But everybody has a different style and a different thing, and on some level you're developing your style if you're starting out, and maybe you're not in a strict environment where you're like, this is what I shoot, this is what I need, and you need something that covers a range. And when you have that situation, I love talking to people who are kind of in that zone, obviously, because like I was supposed to end the live stream like an hour ago, and I'm still here talking about cameras. But there you go. Really, Abel, you're. This is the first I'm hearing of this. I thought other people hated the GoPro more publicly. I may have to make a video about how much I hate the GoPro. I mean, it's not a bad camera if you need it to do the things that the very slim range of things that it is meant for and that it is good for. But one of the things that I think GoPro has struggled with is that they've tried to add more pro features, and like again, there's a handful of things that they're good at. Like I watch some of the History Channel shows like Curse of Oak Island. Okay, it's about a bunch of guys from Michigan who are exploring this mystery by digging a hole in the ground where there's supposed to be pirate treasure or like Knights Templar treasure buried in Nova Scotia. Newsflash, nothing is there. Probably nothing has been there, and if it ever was there, it was gone like 200 years ago. These guys got money and a bunch of production companies that want to pay to, intrigue people with their mystery. Great. One of the things that show has told me and taught me is not just about the fact that there are suckers born every minute, but is also the fact that GoPro has a really unique niche in the world of filmmaking. And, when you see shots on that show, that it's like they have the GoPro mounted on the bucket of the crane, and they have one or they have it on the top of the crane on the boom, and they have one on the bucket of the backhoe that's digging, and they have them planted around the blast site where they're doing seismic testing and setting off little micro charges of dynamite, stuff like that. It's like you see the value of a GoPro because nobody's like, oh, wait a minute, that shot could be better quality. It's just like you're up close and, it has some value, right? It's not all bad. But when you're looking at somebody's picture that you're going to post on Instagram or on a website or something else, the keeper ratio is going to be much, much lower with a GoPro for like normal photography. It's just the photos look kind of and like I don't know. I just don't like them. Um, and I've used them a bunch with climbing and from a video standpoint, I think you can get away with a lot more than with still photography. With still photography, people have it's still, so there are fewer distractions. They see more stuff, and the GoPros just, I mean, this is just talking about image quality at this point, which is ironic because with almost no other camera at this point would I have a conversation where I talk about something I don't like in terms of their image quality. because all the other cameras, like if you pay $500 for a camera, I don't care who makes it. I mean, the batteries might run out. You might not like the menu. You might think that their lens selection suck. It might, in all reality, you know, all fair points. But if you put a good lens on it and you take it out and you take pictures with it, you're not going to make a bad picture if you know the basic rules of photography. You're not shooting in like conditions that it's totally not meant for. But with GoPro, it's like it's never really effectively made a jump from that specific niche that it's good at into kind of broad photography for everybody. And I don't think it ever can or it ever will. It's also just really bad in terms of the handling, and it just doesn't handle well. Like for me, handling is a huge, huge issue for handling. Gotta handle well. If a camera doesn't handle well, I don't care what kind of guts you have inside of it, doesn't mean anything to me, because you have to like reprogram everything in your mind. And it's like, for me, the way I approach photography, it's photography for the working stiff, like not for the guy who's gonna like read their manual 3 pages, 4 pages a night before bed and sleep with a manual under their pillow. Like, who approaches photography like that, who actually has a job and a life? Nobody, right? And even most pros that I know don't approach photography like that. And so it's got to handle really well. And that's my one objection with the Sony RX100 line, the Mark IV. Beautiful camera. The menu system is clunky. I don't love it. And that's the one drawback. And that's the one thing where Fuji has kept me coming back again and again and again. With still photos, hands down, the best, the most usable, the most intuitive, the most well laid out, best menu system, and the best functionality that you're ever going to find, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. You can change my mind, perhaps, but I don't know how. Like, and GoPro is just, they crap the bed in terms of their user interface and their functionality, because again, it's not meant for that. It's meant for you to push a button, to go through, like, spend 5 minutes messing with the settings, getting it right. Hopefully you have the battery pack, because if you don't, your battery's already dead by the time you get the settings right. One of the many things I don't like about GoPro from what I've used. But then, like, you use your 1 bar of battery left, you push the button, you walk away, and then you come pick the camera up that night, and you have a little time lapse of whatever you were off doing, or you have some video of whatever your car was driving past, or your motorcycle, if you're one of those, dinguses that wears it on your helmet. Like, sorry, it just looks like, it looks terrible and ridiculous. And I've been that guy with climbing, wearing it on my helmet, and I hated myself so much that I couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. I had to stop. But the user interface on the GoPros are just appalling. And I am going to make a specific video about how much I hate GoPros and why. Abel says also the GoPro publicity is targeted to people that do sports and for the people that want to make something risky but they don't do anything. Very true. It's like, in a lot of cases, you see people like going to national parks or going on, I lived in a national park, so I saw the good, the bad, and the ugly of like travel photography. And I would see people who would get out of their car with, like, their wife would have to schlep the camera bag, and then dad has this camera that costs, you know, an unconscionable amount of money, big Nikons or big Canons, and they would get out and they would, like, use their pop-up flash to take a picture of the mountain, like, 5 miles away, and then they would get back in their car and they would drive to the next pull-off to do the same thing. And I was just like, oh my god, these people, like, why do you have a camera like this to do that? Like, it's a complete waste, you know. On the other hand, you know, you also see people that are going to go on the little riverside hike or walk, and they have the GoPro on the stick, and they're like, and I've experimented with that. I've tried to do it. I'm not casting dispersions, because I've been both of those people to a certain extent, so I understand it. But, there, you have to really be doing something outstanding to make GoPros look outstanding. Whereas if you take, like, a little camera, like a little Sony RX100 Mark IV or Mark III even, because really the Mark III is better than the 4, in my opinion, because it's tailored more to still photos, and they didn't upgrade all the crap with the video stuff. So if you're not shooting video, like, forget about the 4, the 2 or the 3, the way to go. You take one of those, you use a little bit of composition magic, like just squatting down and getting the camera close to the thing you're taking a picture of, so that you have, something in the background, and then you get a little bit of, separation, because the lens focuses, and you can pull that, you can get that separation even without having to have, like, a super high, um, or a super low aperture, a sharp, super sharp lens, or whatever, or fast lens. See, my camera terminology is all gone. It's out of my brain. But without having a super fast lens, you can still get plenty of separation if you just use a little composition magic, and then you do a little bit of editing, and you have a beautiful photo that looks really remarkable. And people are like, wow, that's really pretty. And they don't know that there's like 50 people standing right next to you or right behind you, because you used your composition magic, and hey presto, you have like a beautiful photo by using the magic of photography as a thing, and a little bit of editing to make some of the colors pop, and great, you have, you know. But it's a lot harder to do that with a GoPro. And yeah, you have to really be doing something. I mean, even with climbing, and everybody's like, oh, you should get a GoPro. Like, GoPros would be rad for climbing. And unless you have like a team of people setting them up in various places, as one person kind of shooting, on the fly, they're just really not great for that either. So, yeah. Abel says, yeah, once the flash pops up, everything, all hope is lost, and that's definitely true. Yeah. So, again, GoPro, it can work in some cases, but very few. And it's something that honestly, like, I don't think, I mean, on some level it's genius marketing, because you want to make everybody feel like they're a pro, climber, or surfer, or motorbikeist, who can just, put one of these things on their handlebars and play some, dubstep music, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, everybody, I've no, I don't have a hard time getting laid anymore, because everybody sees this, and I'm a professional extreme athlete and everything. But like, by contrast, anything short of that, like, amazing footage that's coming from people doing death-defying stuff, anything short of that is gonna look like dog crap, unfortunately. And that's just, sorry, GoPro. I guess I'm gonna have to rescind that sponsorship agreement. I'm gonna have to go the other direction on that. Anyways, Abel, I appreciate your liveliness in the chat, because you pretty much own. Peter Kent is here. Hang on a second, Peter. I have to finish thanking Abel for being um, like so lively in the chat, and giving me all this stuff to talk about, and riffing on GoPro with me. That's been a lot of fun. I was about to say goodnight. Peter, I am doing well. I have been well. I have a little bit of time off from school now, so I'm kind of taking my mid-semester, or my winter break, to kind of get on here a little bit. I don't really have a schedule when I'm going to be live streaming, so I'm going to just kind of do a bunch of these, and so anytime, I'll try to announce it on my Instagram, but pop in anytime. Mostly in the evenings is when I'm going to be doing these, probably a couple of times a week at least. Um, Perhaps when school starts and I have a little bit more of a regular schedule, because right now visiting my daughter kind of takes away some of the regular stuff in my schedule all revolves around her. Sorry, I can't, make you guys my baby at this point. So yeah, been just kind of, everything's been work, school, and gym. That's pretty much been, and seeing my daughter on the, every other weekend. That's kind of been my life for the last 3 years, or whatever. But I'm excited to be able to have some stuff to, put up here again, and just be able to chat with you guys. And so mostly what I'm going to be doing is going to be live streaming, but I can actually switch back and forth to my desktop, which I'm going to, just to prove that I'm not making that up, I can pop back and forth. This is just, just to make sure that I can actually do that. But I can do photo critiques, I can, show you pictures, I can do a bunch of different things that way in real time, but it's not going to be the tight narrative that fits into a 7.5 minute tightly edited video with dubstep and cool intro outros where I go boom and I, make you like, wow, he just transitioned, he just went like that with his hand, and now all of a sudden he's in the middle of the forest or climbing a mountain. Like, sorry, it's just going to be me and my stupid face, like, sitting in here talking to you guys, but I'm enjoying that, and it gives me the opportunity to cover the full breadth of topics in relationship to conversations that I have with you guys, so that's awesome. Yeah, thanks, Peter. I actually missed you as well, and I thought of you as King Yuzi was in here earlier, Yusuf was in here, and a couple of you guys that were um, regulars on the live streams, and I'm hoping that we'll get a couple of those maybe after the fact. That'll drop some comments in here, and we'll start getting some of the gang back together. And I miss having these conversations just to be able to talk about things that are going on in my life and some of my philosophical tangents. It's good stuff. So I appreciate it. Yeah, man, nice seeing you. Good seeing you too, Pete. And Abel and anybody else who's in here. Looks like we got a handful of people still in here. Appreciate you guys coming and checking out the stream. Look me up on Instagram. Let's stay in touch. Make sure to enable notifications. Definitely should have said that at the beginning of the stream so that people would actually get that message, or the majority of people who are going to cycle through this video would have a chance to, but whatever. You all have been around YouTube long enough. You know how it works. If you want to watch stuff, you'll find a way to get there and take a look at it. I believe that. So anyways, thanks guys for coming and checking out my first stream, returning to the YouTubes. Hope to see and hear more from you guys in the not too distant future. I will definitely be on here live streaming again, probably within the next day or two, and we'll kind of figure out a schedule and figure out what's going to work. Figure out, not finger out. Figure out what is going to work on here. So anyways, good night. Yeah, no mind-blowing, inspiring, catchy quotes to leave you guys with. Just thanks for sticking around and checking things out. And we'll see you guys on the next live stream.